Story 1. It is the fault of this fragile flesh, this decaying prison that wraps itself around my soul. It clings with desperate fingers, whispering of life even as it crumbles with every passing moment. The body is but a vessel of rot, dragging my eternal spark downward, closer to the cold embrace of the earth. With every breath, it betrays me, eroding what little defiance remains, pulling me nearer to stillness. Were it not for this failing shell, my soul would soar unbound, timeless, untouchable, as it was meant to be. Story 2. Because I despise those who use their immorality as an excuse to harm others. To not consider how your actions affect others is immoral. I am not going to be like those who hurt my family. Story 3. My mom's feelings. That's pretty much it as far as I am concerned. Life is not fair. Some of us are born into intact families in developed countries where our parents earn $500,000 a year. Others are born East Indian, in developing countries where food availability is unstable. Once you are able to accept that life is inherently unfair, you can justify doing whatever you feel you must to even the playing field. Story 4. Happy to see so many relatable people here, because yes, everyone is the same. Always on the other end of the bargain but still holding to my morals. Story 5. I'm autistic, so I adhere particularly tightly to my core values. I generally do not flex on them even if they make me unpopular. As to how I determine my core values, I come from a pretty disordered background, so I had to sort through all of that baggage first. The rest came to light once all the other noise was gone. I value life, humanity, kindness, equality, and fairness. Story 6. I do not want to hurt my parents, and I have to admit, I do not want the intelligence that created us to punish me by permanently separating me from my parents once I am gone. Story 7. Karma. Bad decisions have bad consequences. I want to be a person I can respect. I want to feel good about myself. Water seeks its own level. I want to be with good people I can trust and depend on. That will not happen if I cannot be trusted or am not dependable. Story 8. A moral compass not attached to any religious figure. I care about how my actions affect others, reduce ways in which I may cause suffering, and I think humans thrive best as a group. Making decisions based on these principles results in moral and ethical behavior. Story 9. Read this as immortal at first and started thinking to myself, wait, I had a choice this whole time. Story 10. What is preventing me? Apparently evanescence, because my immortal started echoing through my soul the second I read this. It has been on repeat ever since. Story 11. That depends on what you consider to be immoral. My conscience and my life philosophy of being good to others prevent me from hurting people. Story 12. For those who answered my morality or some variant of it, please develop that. Moral philosophy is one of my passions, so I am eager to know what people think they mean. What does it mean by your morality? Who helped you devise it? What makes it satisfying? Immorality is in the eye of the beholder, so if your sense of right and wrong is based on your preferences, does that mean it is not possible for you to be immoral if everything you do conforms to your personal morality? If I do it, it is not immoral. Story 13. Mostly, the consequence is not worth it. The technology is too advanced to leave no evidence. Otherwise, I probably would have harmed a few people, to be honest. Story 14. Most people are immoral, but they justify their actions. We usually call other people immoral when their faults are different from ours. How could a person ever do X? Exclaims the person who consistently does Y. Story 15. The fact that I care about what others think of me and that I have 2 children who need me to be a good example so they grow up to be decent human beings. Story 16. For me, it is mostly an economic decision. I value what I have at this point, any of which could potentially be lost if I were to take actions that my partner and I claim not to support. Story 17. Reciprocity is simple. I do nice things for you and you do nice things for me. If there is no reciprocity, you disregard it. I look the other way when you are in trouble. Simple. Story 18. I guess I just naturally feel inclined to try my best to be a good person. I do not know, probably society somehow. Story 19. The fact that I simply do not want to. Why would I want to harm other people when kindness costs nothing? Even if it would benefit me in some way, it would taint anything I might have gained from it because I would not have earned it myself. Story 20. I do not want to hurt anyone. Why would you take actions that hurt others? How would you feel if they did that to you? No, just because you have been hurt does not give you permission to hurt others in return. Story 21. A combination of empathy and assuming nothing will ever work out well. In addition to feeling bad about doing it, I also assume I would be caught and face repercussions. Story 22. Morality is subjective, and everyone's morals are different. What most people would view as immoral might just be an average Tuesday to others. I highly doubt there are many people who would view their own actions as immoral. Story 23. Usually, the values I hold are to only do things to uplift my fellow human beings and do nothing to disparage others unless they harm me. I am not a hardcore Christian, but I do believe Jesus was a man who did great things, and I follow his words. Story 24. I have no desire to hurt people, and I only have about 50 more years to live anyway. Why waste it hating myself? Story 25. I used to be a drug addict. When I got clean, I started making better choices. Being a drug addict, you see a lot. You see people do really messed up things, and you do messed up things for basically no reason. After that, you're like, why? It's not that hard to do better. It's not that hard to be better. Make decent choices. Be a decent human. You can still stand up for yourself, watch out for red flags, and make yourself a strong, confident individual, all while being a good person. It just isn't that hard to be good. Story 26. We all are, in one way or another. It just depends on the degree to which you are comfortable. No one is perfect. Perfection is unattainable. Story 27. Conscience and empathy. I want to be able to look at the man in the mirror without feeling disgusted. Story 28. I am not religious at all, atheist for sure, but I live my life by the golden rule. It will answer any morality question as long as you are honest about it. No, it did not come from the Bible. It was around much longer than that. Most of the Bible is just a retelling of old stories. Story 29. I was talking to one of my ex-partners who lives out of state. She had come into the state with her husband and 3 children. Based on my last conversations with her, she was planning to divorce him sooner rather than later. She wanted me to meet up with her on her last night out, as she told her husband she would spend the night at a friend's house. There was no friend. I was the friend. I declined because I preferred to save money for my trip. She wanted to go to dinner somewhere 30 minutes away from her place, and she immediately gave me the cold shoulder. It didn't sit right with me, knowing that the husband definitely gave her money to go out. Her plan was to go out, get drunk with another man, and possibly stay at his house, her ex nonetheless. I know I did something right since she deleted the majority of messages that suggested she was trying to reach out to me, of which there were many. Now she posts that their relationship is perfectly healthy, that she aims to be a proper wife, and that they want their family to work out. Well, it took 2 parties to convince her to do that, and the other one was not her husband. Story 30. What is the definition of immorality? For some, sex before marriage is immoral. In most countries, sex with a 15-year-old is immoral. For some religions, marrying a distant cousin is acceptable. Some cultures eat horse meat, which is considered absolutely immoral in other countries. Based on my own country, culture, and non-religious beliefs, it is simply the law. Not that I would become completely irrational without laws, but I would definitely harm more people who anger me if I knew there would be no consequences. Story 31. I would have no friends, and my family would disown me. I would feel even more lonely than I already do. Also, prison is a significant deterrent. Story 32. That difficult child I tried to harm when he was an infant, but I failed somehow. Oh, immoral. Nothing. Story 33. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to kick a kitten or make a baby cry. I feel aversion to doing something like that. There is a high chance I will get in trouble if I do that. If I could steal $1 million from a bank by pressing a button, and it was guaranteed nothing would happen to me and nobody would know, I would be pressing that button like a monkey. Story 34. Losing myself. I see people around me and how they act, behave, and judge, and it scares me. I do not want to be blind and consumed by ego, which makes you hurt others and ruin yourself. Story 35. I've struggled with depression and self-worth issues my whole life. Life has not been easy for me mentally. So what stops me from being immoral? I do not want to make someone's life any harder than it probably already is. I would not wish what I feel on anyone. From my standpoint, having self-worth issues, I could not add being immoral on top of that. I just could not handle it. Also, what is immoral? I do many things others, especially Christians, might think are immoral. But it is not immoral to me, my partner, or anyone else involved. Story 36. Well, what keeps me from being immoral is probably how I was raised, a sense of decency and self-respect. Sometimes there are thoughts or temptations, but I always ask myself, do I really need this? How will I feel about myself afterward? And how will others see me? I just want to live a good life without unnecessary mess. Story 37. I simply do not want to be immoral in the ways I consider immoral. I am very immoral to a lot of people. There are people who actively preach that I am worthy of eternal torture for not following their religion. I am just a person who cares about other people. Story 38. It makes me feel good to make others feel good, and it makes me feel bad when others feel bad. I guess I am selfish. Story 39. My values define who I am to myself. I live by them to sleep peacefully at night. Living by those values helps build a consistent reputation that leads to being trusted by my peers and helps me live a life that I want and feel good about. Story 40. Humans alone do not do well and tend to die early. Humans with friends, family, or society do very well and tend to live long. We need other people to like us as a survival mechanism. Even if you have all the money and resources in the world, without people who care about you, you will be miserable. What is or is not moral depends largely on the society and culture being discussed. Story 41. I put right and wrong in a pros and cons list. I am very analytical when it comes to moral code. Always do unto others as they have done to you. If it is immoral, then your actions are matching the energy received. There is nothing wrong with a little brutality when warranted. Story 42. It makes me feel bad and fills me with guilt, so I do not do it. Also, my parents have not taught me to do immoral things, so of course I will not fall into such actions. Story 43. The human standard is empathy at its base. Cruelty is caused by trauma. Hurt people hurt people. You choose not to be unkind. But if you need something to stop you from going there, that person needs therapy. Story 44. An innate sense and understanding that those actions make my community worse for everyone. For what? My own selfishness? Story 45. It is a personal choice not to be immoral if you do not want to be. I made a choice not to be because I do not want to. I like having a clean conscience. It is not perfect, but it is pretty good. I would like to keep it that way. I do not care what the rest of the world does. I do what is best for me and my mental health. Story 46. I was raised to try and do the right thing. Do not steal, lie, or intentionally try to hurt others, even if it hurts you in the process. Obviously, there are limits to that. This does not mean become a doormat or let other people take advantage of what you worked hard to earn. I am just not typically going to take advantage of others just because I can get away with it. Story 47. Mix of God. Inner voice telling me off. Guilt. My brain cannot handle hurting others. It will drive me into depression. Story 48. Confusion, fear, logic. However, I perceive myself as moral. I also hate being touched and know I would get a pat down in jail and have to look at people in a demeaning way. There is no basic human privacy. That is pretty motivating. Story 49. I had something smart to say as I read your post title. What is preventing you from being immortal? Story 50. Character, I suppose. Isn't this a cyclical thing? If I came up with a concrete reason outside of who I am, it would defeat the entire point. Key point. Morals are often compressed archetypal wisdom, so you reject them at your own peril. It depends on the society you live in, but I would tread lightly when behaving differently towards some rule you might not fully understand in its purpose. Not all rules are meant to chain you. The ones that survive the ages are often proven to keep you alive and well. Story 51 character, I suppose. Isn't this a cyclical thing? If I came up with a concrete reason outside of who I am, it would defeat the entire point. Key point. Morals are often compressed and archetypal wisdom, so you reject them at your own peril. It depends on the society you live in, but I would tread lightly when behaving differently toward a rule you might not fully understand in its purpose. Not all rules are meant to chain you. The ones that survive the ages are often proven in keeping you alive and well. Story 52. The knowledge that it would hurt someone else, make them feel less than, and generally make the world a worse place. Story 53. To live your life without causing issues to others is to live in defiance of those who would cause you issues. You do not need religion to embrace the golden rule. It makes everything better for everyone. We do not have to kill or be killed. That is for wild animals, and I think we should try to be better than that. People who gain their wealth and power by stepping on others are emotionally weak. Story 54. Just don't feel like being a problem. But the older I get, the more often I wonder why I am doing this when nobody else seems to care and there is nothing to gain but self-satisfaction. Story 55. It's a popular joke, but it's true in my case. If I ever become immoral, God will use me to teach people a lesson about morality. Story 56. My moral compass includes those unusually inquisitive people you occasionally see in the city. They always wear blue clothes, walk around in pairs, and have blue cars too. Story 57. Define each immoral behavior individually and ask me about each case, and I will give you an answer. There are no easy or worthwhile answers to questions like this. Story 58. I put the shopping cart back where it belongs. If you can pass that test, chances are you are not unpleasant. Story 59. Selfishness and general compliance with societal norms and what was taught to me when I was small. In short, brainwashing. I do not want to be thought of as the bad guy, and I do not want to pay any sort of price such as jail for being immoral. Story 60. My values. I am good by decision, not by the promise of heaven. If I avoid being bad, it is not because of fear of hell, but because I love my freedom. Story 61. I would love it if everyone were moral. Wouldn't it be great if you could trust everyone, rely on everyone, and everyone was compassionate and civil? If I want that kind of world, the first step is to embody that kind of attitude myself. Story 62. I think it is frustrating that we all found ourselves here in a hostile and unforgiving environment with no say in the matter. It is like being drugged only to wake up in a locked room with a group of strangers who were also brought there without their consent. The best thing to do in that situation is to work together to improve your circumstances. There is no need to alienate people who are in the exact same situation as you. Story 63. Generally jail and my wife being disappointed in me. I'd be willing to try some things to never have to work again if it were not for those. Do not hate the player though, hate the game that allows it. Story 64. Mainly, it makes me feel bad because I like to do the right thing. However, part of it at this point is obsessive-compulsive disorder. I do not know how, but certain obsessions and compulsions I have influenced some actions that may relate to morals, if that makes sense. Story 65. Immoral acts are considered wrong for a reason. It makes sense to have morals against committing immoral acts because they do not make sense. For example, murder without reason is not only pointless, but if everyone did it, then society would collapse, and our ordered society that we have worked hard to build would regress. Humans desire progress to live and to multiply, among other things. Story 66. Morality is relative. Some people see me, my existence, and my lifestyle as immoral. Tattoos, atheism, speaking out against political and institutional corruption, and championing the rights of the oppressed. All these are things that disqualify me from being a moral human being in the eyes of many. My own sense of ethics drives me to pursue a certain standard of justice. I always behave in a manner that I perceive as morally justifiable. So does everyone else. What prevents me from behaving like some people do is that I fundamentally disagree with their sense of justice. Story 67. This basic human empathy is essential. Aggressive individuals and toxic people may say empathy is a weakness and harmful. I understand that if I do not treat someone with kindness, dignity, and respect, it is unreasonable to expect that treatment from others, especially strangers. This is how society functions, and I appreciate living in a society. Story 68. We are all sharing the same planet and mind space. We all want to experience love, joy, peace, and comfort. We all come from the same primordial origin, and we will all return there one day, perhaps together. The least we can do is be kind to one another. Story 69. I had an entire childhood of being treated in immoral ways. I did not like it, so I do not do it to others. Story 70. The words of the immortal sages William and Theodore. Be excellent to each other and party on, friends. Story 71. I grew up in apartheid South Africa and will never inflict the same pain, humiliation, and cruelty on anyone. Story 72. I do not want to be harmed, so I do my best not to harm others. That is all there is to it. No deity in the sky, no concerns about an afterlife. It just hurts to be hurt, and I do not want to cause pain. Story 73. I am stubborn, prideful, and resolute in my decision-making. If I did not have morals, I would be stubborn, prideful, and bigoted. Story 74. I have ethics, and I recognize how my actions affect others. It is not a big deal most of the time. The most tempting thing I can remember was to dead-name and misgender my abusive ex, or lie to fill in the gaps of my memory to make things sound worse. But I was determined not to let her make me a worse person. I already did not hit back, and I was not losing the high ground. Story 75. I always have two paths. One is the good or right way, and the other is the bad or evil way. I never think about the consequences of the good path, but before making a decision, I always consider the results that are most likely to happen if I choose the evil path. Story 76. I would never want anyone to feel the way I have been made to feel. We do not realistically live in a do unto others as they do to you world. Story 77. I may have unconventional skills, but I have a moral high ground and the good sense to know what is right and wrong. Story 78. I'm too lazy to be immoral. I would have to put Reddit and my snacks down and get up out of my recliner to be immoral. Story 79. Many people are so focused on doing what they want because they can, that they never consider that showing grace or humanity for others' benefit is truly important when living in society. In short, I uphold morals for the good of society. I do not want to see us collectively slide into selfish and ultimately unfulfilling decadence by projecting a monkey-see, monkey-do attitude for others to imitate, as that does not seem noble. This has nothing to do with religion either. I am an atheist. Story 80. Awareness of consequences, the desire to be a good person, my ability to avoid trouble and learn from experience. Story 81. My soul, which is the pilot of my body, communicates seamlessly to respond to all circumstances in a way that ensures we are always working towards the higher good. Story 82. I believe you get what you put in. Do a bunch of stupid things, and that is what you are going to get back. And you know you did right, and it is easier to deal with. Story 83. I am completely indifferent to morality. When I consider something, whether it is the correct answer or the most incorrect answer, all possibilities are the same to me. The reason I consciously choose the correct answer is not because it is right, but because I understand the consequences of choosing the incorrect answer. Mental illnesses are difficult to live with. Story 84. The fact that I cannot allow myself to be like my father is my biggest driving force. I also think, what if my child finds out when he gets older? Would he feel exactly how I did and follow the same path? Would he do what I did and fall into obscurity as well? I would also hate for my significant other to feel how my mother felt when she found out. Because of these reasons, I cannot allow myself to be immoral. Story 85. Sympathy and empathy, along with morals, are important. If it hurts someone, it is probably not worth doing. Story 86. Law and order is essential for a society to function. If everyone went out and did whatever they wanted, we would quickly see a return to the primal age. Story 87. I cannot even choose the evil options or paths in a video game because I feel bad for the fictional characters. Story 88. Sometimes I am not really sure. I just go with my gut and hope I am doing the moral thing. I am sure it has not worked 100% of the time, but it is definitely working better than it is not. You know what I mean? Story 89. My username is not Satan Spawner, so immoral behavior seems inappropriate. Isosceles left triangle was supposed to be a lame joke about the opposite of a right triangle. Unfortunately, I could not include the final E because of a character limit, and I like the word isosceles. Story 90. Having left church, being gay, and all the damage that combination caused helped. Leaving church definitely opened my eyes to the many harmful ideas that some churches promote to young, innocent minds. Many people on the political right are victims of this. Story 91. Feeling overwhelmingly compelled to do the right thing. I know I will be judged one day. However, a few times in life I decided to act like my environment. I did not like how I felt afterward, so even though in the moment it seems like it may be the right thing to do for your feeling's sake, being immoral never makes you feel good afterward. Story 92. Genuinely, it is not that I would go to prison or anything, but I just feel bad whenever I do something awful. In an anarchic world, I guarantee you I would refrain from hurting other people as much as possible. Story 93. Someone could technically have intercourse with a deceased person while a random elderly woman watches, but why risk stopping and helping her with her dentures after they fall out when someone can receive oral sex from a better source without the added onlookers and hassle? Story 94. My sense of justice and morals. My discourse is not sanitized or politically correct. In fact, I have some opinions that would yield me downvotes here easily. However, when all is said and done, I know there are limits that should never be crossed, and my freedom ends where another person's freedom begins. Story 95. I believe our world would be a better place if everyone treated each other with respect. I cannot change others' morals, but I can change mine. It is a small step, but at least it is something. Story 96. Yes, I had this thought. If free will existed, why don't I wake up one day and think, today I'm going to be evil? So, I look at my motives and motivations, the sum of my resources, experiential triggers, and I realize these are algorithms. But our programs are sophisticated. We have the ability to evaluate our perceptions when encountering influencing factors against our operating algorithms. Story 97. The same reasons I do not have morals. I do not feel like doing anything bad, just as much as I do not feel like doing anything good. In the long run, following the law serves me best. Story 98. The understanding that all that stands between us and making this world an actual hell is moral behavior. Story 99. Your soul is in your keeping alone. When you stand before God, you cannot say, but I was told by others to do this or that. Virtue was not convenient at the time. This will not suffice. King Baldwin IV, Kingdom of Heaven. Story 100. Knowing I will be punished for it, but trust me, I am definitely a bad girl. I play Mario Kart and I do not have a license. Story 101. Circumstances are fine for now. However, I believe that when things go wrong, most of us will abandon our morals, especially if we have people to care for. Story 102. I suppose that depends on the definition of moral versus immoral, but in general, I just do not like to hurt people. Story 103. Social and legal consequences apply for some. Other forms of immoral behavior, such as animal abuse, make me feel uncomfortable and go against my morals. Story 104. Realizing that being immoral works only in the short term and there is always a much worse payback in the long term. Story 105. I think I have about 5 years left before I become immoral. If I am still living with my evil parent in 5 years, I will commit a crime. 30 years of my life living with evil and having access to only 20% of my brain is enough. Story 106. We are all imperfect at times. We are human beings. Regarding heinous actions, I do not see a point. Story 107. Depends on where you draw the line. What is moral for you might be immoral for me, and vice versa. Everyone has a reason for doing what they do. War is immoral, but the people who start wars do not think, let us harm them. I am not advocating war. It is a terrible thing that I find extremely immoral. For example, eating meat is immoral for certain vegans but perfectly normal for other people. So what keeps me from being immoral? My own views and norms. I do not engage in what I consider immoral because I find it immoral. Story 108. My name has value to me. What people think matters, especially my wife, my daughters, and my family. Doing anything that would bring shame to them is one of my worst fears. My morals are what keep me on the straight and narrow. Story 109. I enjoy demonstrating my integrity and being kind to people. Don't you want to join me? Story 110. It depends on what you mean because I cannot say I have always acted morally. It is incredibly hard to be moral when it conflicts with your self-interest or even privilege. Story 111. The fact that I was taught the golden rule in kindergarten, treat others how you wish to be treated yourself. Being good is incredibly simple. Can be hard at times, but it is always simple. It is only ever the unpleasant people in the world who try to make it seem complicated. Story 112. Fear of God, karma, retribution, sending bad energy out that will eventually come back and affect me. But fundamentally, I just hate immorality. I wish ethics and morals were praised much more than they are right now. Society is literally turning into trash. Story 113. I am not committing any violent or criminal acts. There are very few people in the world I would be prepared to punch in the face, and I believe people are generally entitled to keep the things they own. Story 114. Lack of creativity in widespread immorality, the same immoral stereotypes, the same pattern of corruption involving wealth and power. Then you look up at the sky and laugh. A lack of modern immoral idols, I guess. Story 115. An inner voice and the knowledge that it would play on my mind forever afterward if I did. Sometimes I see people who have no qualms doing so get ahead in life, and that really angers me. Story 116. My brain, then my heart, then my religion, then my culture, then my upbringing, then my ultimate response. No, it's not worth it. Story 117. Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Yes, no, I am an atheist. It is because I understand cause and effect. Story 118. Guilt and consequences. Not just legal consequences but social ones as well. If I cheat on my wife, I will not go to jail, but my wife might leave me. I will also have to live with myself as someone who cheated on their spouse, and I hold myself to a higher standard than that. Story 119. Not wanting to ever inflict the pains that were inflicted upon me as a child and adult onto others. The world is already brutal to each of us enough. Why add to it? Story 120. Besides the painfully obvious answers, we built the world as it is to make it a better place. Despite the numerous issues right now, the fundamental thought for moving forward will always be a form of kindness, no matter how misguided it sometimes is. And especially in a world that currently is not, be kind. Story 121. Morality and immorality are subject to the society we live in. For me, it is the investment in moral things and the consequence of losing them. It is just not worth it. Story 122. My immigrant parents did not work themselves to the bone to come here, help pay for my schooling, and give me a better life so that I can get paid to degrade and spank high-power but submissive men, however appealing and pleasurable it would be for me. Story 123. Empathy. I can empathize with people who would suffer if I do wrong to them. However, this is somewhat problematic when the deeds do not involve major suffering of a direct victim, such as minor theft from chain stores. The only reason I do not do that is because I am not that desperate. Story 124. Define immoral, decoupled from Christianity and other religions. Using a defined sense of moral and immoral, we can now examine motivations. Response to original poster. No desire to be an asshole nor engage in assholery. Period. No motivation para sa rakirat. Story 125. Honestly, knowing the difference between right and wrong and understanding my own comfort zone, I will not compromise my integrity. Story 126. Because I want to be seen as a good person, I strive to make the world a better place for my children. Therefore, I try to lead my life by example. Story 127. Prison is not a place I want to be, ever. I also do not want to disappoint my parents and loved ones. Being good is not that difficult. Story 128. I am pretty sure I would just be doing evil things if I knew for sure I would never be caught. Since I fear being caught, I am not doing evil things. I could probably get past the guilt eventually. Probably we all could. But there are some seriously unpleasant consequences for doing things people do not like. Story 129. My consciousness. I will guilt trip myself to oblivion if I am accidentally immoral. Imagine what it would do if I were purposely immoral. Story 130. Hurting people physically would get me in legal trouble. Hurting people mentally is something I do if I feel like it, invest the time, and believe I can get away with it. Stealing things depends on whether I need them and the chance of consequences. Basically, it is all about the consequences and what I can get away with. Story 131. This is always the most foolish attack by religious believers. Because you do not believe in God, you supposedly want to harm your neighbor, rob a bank, or cheat on your taxes. Humans have evolved into social beings with a sense of care and honesty toward others. If the only reason a person is moral is because they think God is watching, what does that say about their morality? By the way, the vast majority of inmates in prison believe in God. Story 132. Empathy is understanding what it feels like when someone is being unpleasant to you. I believe that everyone and everything deserves respect until proven otherwise. It actually requires a conscious effort to be immoral. Story 133. According to some, only the threat of going to hell for bad actions prevents them from being immoral. Otherwise, I suppose they would commit rape, robbery, and murder at will. Let them believe that. It is the only thing keeping them at bay. Story 134. Depends on who you ask. I am immoral. But what prevents me from crossing the moral boundaries I set for myself is that I do not want to. Story 135. There can be only two answers: desire or ability. For most people, most of the time, it is desire. We call this morality. Occasionally, it is ability. Story 136. Nothing. I am immoral. Like the vast majority of you, by the way, but you just do not think about yourselves as bad people. Of course you do not. Story 137. My conscience, also known as my empathy, feels good to do good, feels bad to do bad. How about you, Satan spawner? Do you have anything preventing you from doing unethical things? Do you struggle with that? Story 138. It is bad for my soul. It will eat me alive to do vicious things to people only for my own benefit, to neglect others' feelings, and wholly pursue my own pleasure in these types of acts. It does not align with me or who I want to be, so it eats me alive. I feel rather at peace when keeping to my moral compass. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.